Well, welcome to today's webinar. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes to get logged in and then we'll get started. So get started in about 30 seconds. Okay, well, welcome and thank you all for attending today's discussion around AD security and password policy and management. We're really excited to have Robert Piddock joining us for our session. My name is Jim and I'm the vice chair of the ARMA Board of Directors, and I'll be your moderator this afternoon. So feel free to throw some questions in the chat box, and we'll answer them at the end of this presentation. So before we get started, we want to thank everyone for being a valued member of ARMA, joining us today from online education, industry opportunities. We encourage you to connect and gain professional resources through your membership. In fact, the new My ARMA section of the site is literally a great resource to connect virtually no matter where you are in the world. And I highly encourage you to join the conversation on My ARMA. I'm sure there'll be plenty of conversations after this webinar. If you're not an ARMA member, we highly encourage you to visit arma.org to see all that ARMA has to offer. So how about those frequently asked questions? Well, to answer everyone's burning question, will today's webinar be recorded? A resounding yes. So today's webinar will be recorded. All professional members will receive access to the recording and slides. So please check your emails for a follow-up from Zoom in the next 1 to 2 business days for additional details and access. Of course, too, before we begin our presentation, we want to thank our sponsor. So I want to take a minute to thank today's speaker and sponsor for their support of ARMA and our community. We could not bring education, programming, and events without the support of our business partners. We hope when you're selecting services and product for your business, you consider partners like Netwrix, who support you. So now I have the honor of introducing Robert. Robert has an extensive background in software solutions, focusing on IT management, cybersecurity, and data classification. Today, he's brought with him knowledge of password management and data governance. And with that, I'll turn it over to Robert.
Thanks, Jim. Great intro. Thank you so much. It is a great honor to be presenting for ARMA again. This is actually the third time, I think, maybe more, that I've presented for ARMA, but the first time since 2018. So it's been a while, first time virtually too. I just want to apologize in advance. I might go on mute. I am just recovering from my first and hopefully last bout of COVID. So 3 years in, finally caught up to me. So yeah, if I go on mute for a second and it goes silent, it's probably not an internet connection. It's me hacking my lung out, but that should be fine. It's all better. It was very mild. So Netwrix, I am actually in charge of password solutions at Netwrix, and it's a division of Netwrix. I don't know if many of you know Netwrix, but I'll tell you a little bit about Netwrix. I want to talk about why we're talking about passwords today. Tell you some of the most common problems, hacking problems or security problems with passwords, and then show you some solutions on how to resolve those. This will be a very product-focused presentation, but I'll do my best to share as much knowledge that I can, that it doesn't require a purchase from us if I can, just because I know your time is valuable and you don't want to just come hear a product pitch. So I will do my best in that area as well. Also, I do encourage you to look out to our website for some other great free content. We recently had a different webinar with a hacker on last week where he basically showed us how hackers are hacking our passwords and our credentials. And it's great if you want to learn how to be a hacker. I didn't say that. But of course, if we're in the space where we're trying to protect our data, we should also be well aware on how that data is in danger. So Netwrix. Netwrix is a company born from IT visibility solutions. So we're working in the information management space and in the information security space. We do everything on the NIST framework, and that's kind of our foundation that we lay our product vision and strategy on top of. So that includes data governance, identity and access management, which is where my department lies, Active Directory security, ransomware protection, and compliance. We have a number of solutions for all of those things. And if you're interested in, or if you have any concerns about any kind of cybersecurity threats, or even stuff like Jim mentioned, data classification, we have great solutions. We'll help you find sensitive data, do DSARs, manage data, stop threats, a huge area of protections for those. But under identity and access management, we have a few products that specifically help. Some of them are IT visibility, like our Auditor and Stealth Audit product, but others are for managing privileged access, like Privilege Secure. We have endpoint protection, so you can remove administrative access and control what people are doing on endpoints with our Policy Pack product. We can help you to manage groups with our Group ID product, and onboard and offboard customers and automate IT setup with our User Cube solution. And in my area, we have a couple of core pieces that help us manage and protect passwords. And that's what we'll talk about today. And those are Password Policy Enforcer and our password manager called Password Secure. So why do we want to have strong passwords? Why do we want a concern with passwords? Well, first of all, I'd like to say that it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month here in October. And if you go to CISA or if you go to NIST, you will see that the number one thing that they talk about is getting strong passwords. And that's not just for organizations, that's for end users too. Because passwords are weak and most people don't have strong passwords, and it makes it a really easy access for hackers and bad actors to get in, get your information, steal your data, and that's both on a personal and an organizational level. It is very simple for hackers to get your password, and if they've got your hashes, they can crack that in just a matter of minutes. And if they don't, they can just spray known passwords against your solutions. So this chart from Hive Systems shows us that last year, in 2022, it took 39 minutes to crack a password that had full complexity, numbers, upper, lowercase letters, symbols. Just 39 minutes for a hacker with using a modern GPU to go in and figure out what that password was. Those passwords are usually super complex because they're so short, but they're easy to remember for our users. This year, that number has dropped to 5 minutes. So hackers are getting better, we're getting worse. So we really need to step up our game to stay competitive. Of course, there's a lot of new solutions out there, like passwordless solutions, biometric solutions, Windows Hello, and those are really the future of our credential passing. Also, single sign-on solutions that may use one-time password technologies. A lot of those are cumbersome and burdensome, but they're much stronger, of course. However, passwords are not going away. In 2004, Bill Gates stood up and told the world that passwords were going away. And I had 5 passwords in 2004. Now I have 333 because passwords are easy. Vendors like us like to use passwords. Every site you sign up for now requires a password and uses a password for its credentials because they are easy. They're both easy for the vendor to implement and manage, and they're easy for our users to remember and use. So we're not getting rid of them. So we have to make efforts to try to make them stronger. Um, and users like to use weak passwords because they're required to remember them. I'll get back to that later, but if we're forcing our users to remember them, we need to try to help them to remember things that are easy to remember. And another way that users use to remember them, of course, aside from putting them in sticky notes on their monitors, is they use patterns, common words, and basically choose whatever is easy to remember, and that makes things weak. And these weak passwords get attacked because password spraying is still the #1 way that we get attacked. There's a lot of bad actors out there. There's a lot of zero-day exploits. There's a lot of people who are spending their entire time with lots of funding when it comes to state-sponsored actors to just hack our systems, and they will do it almost randomly. So spraying end users, spraying small companies, they're happy to do that if they can. And what we've done is we have created systems or patterns where passwords are really easy for computers to guess and really hard for users to use. So that's this cartoon, which I love, from the XKCD, shows us that with a lot of effort, what we've come to is passwords that are really easy for computers to crack, and I really point to complexity. You know, these zero requirements, capital letter requirements, special character requirements that we're constantly fighting with every new website that we try to log into. We can't figure out what kind of password they want. These really don't add any value to the strength of the password because computers are really good at guessing those passwords. Whereas a simple long password, like this correct horse battery staple, has much higher entropy and is much easier for end users to use. So that's the direction that we should be going, is trying to get users to think differently about how they're using passwords. Remove things like password meters that are encouraging these kinds of stuff, and maybe think less about complexity and more about length. So what are users using for common patterns? And that's things that are very top of mind for users. You know, we all like to believe we're unique and special, and we are, but we think the same. We have the same social media. We get the same news. We have the same marketing subjected to us. We all live in similar areas, so we have the same seasons going on. So these are just common things that come top of mind when we want to make a new password. So common patterns that we need to be aware of for bad passwords are things like seasons. So fall 2023, starting to be a popular password for our end users right now. Summer 2023 is waning, fall is coming, maybe even winter is on the horizon. The months of the year when I was required to change my password. I'm going to try September 123 as a password. Substitutions. So given that complexity meter, I'm going to start throwing in a 3 for an E or a 1 for an I to try to get around those rules. So those are really common. Plus, people like me have big fat fingers. We want to make it easy to type. So we'll use keyboard patterns. So we'll put QWERTY in our passwords, ASDF, common things, you know, in the pattern that just feels more comfortable to type. Bad news about that is hackers use lists that have all of these patterns in to do substitutions when we're doing a password spray or a hack with a tool like Hashcat. People like to use commands. I think they feel like they're talking to the computer when they're required to make a new password. So they'll just say things like, leave me alone, or go away, or how about this one? So we want to try to avoid those commands as well. Plus, all the other nouns in our world. brand names that we hear a lot about. I'm sure Cybertruck is going to be a new password very soon. Whatever movies are out. I recently saw Elemental. I know that's not terribly new, but maybe Elemental would be on my mind if that was the day I was changing my password. Sports teams, very, very popular sports teams. Everyone loves sports. We're going to put our sports team in our password. Also common things. Maybe Chat GPT is new on the horizon, or names. Robert is awesome. 123 is got to be my password. So just to be aware that these are common patterns that users are using for passwords, and probably when we see them common, we know that the hackers also know that they're common and they're going to be easy to hack. So what Netwrix has done is we have created a password policy enforcement tool in order to help you force your users. We don't want to be too harsh because we want to be guides as much as we want to be police, but we want to force the users to use strong passwords. And that's just not using complex passwords. So I'll show you the out of the box Windows complexity. So if you don't even have that yet, we can get you up to speed there by adding some complexity and length to your passwords. But and there's two versions of that I'll show in the demo. But we want to make sure that we can take that next step and get beyond the simplest weak policies that we have and get some stronger policies, while also encouraging our users to have stronger passwords. So how do we combat all of those weaknesses that I've shown? Well, as I said about my fat fingers, we want to recognize patterns. So we don't want to allow people to use keyboard patterns or common substitutions. We want to have a dictionary for all of those common words: sports teams, new brands, months of the year, those kinds of things, because those are going to be the most common passwords and the easiest to hack. So we actually have two dictionary rules I'll show you, and one is for all the words that we know about, and one is for your words. So we can have ARMA as a special word if we're implemented to ARMA, or Netwrix for us, and all of our product names. And so we know that our users are not going to just default to our company's things, because the hackers are going to find those. They're going to screen scrape our website and start spraying those words as well with all sorts of substitutions. We also do a compromise check. So not only are there bad passwords, but there are passwords that are good that are cracked or leaked onto the internet or onto the dark web. I'm not sure how dark the dark web is, but they're leaked out there, and then hackers share those and sell those lists. And it could be a great password, but it's been compromised. So we want to make sure that our users are not using compromised passwords. So we have a check for that. Important thing about compromised passwords is they're constantly getting compromised. Just a couple of weeks ago, I saw by chance that Duolingo had been hacked. So we want to make sure that users who are using the passwords in Duolingo are not using the same password for our organization as well. So it can also detect character substitutions, do bidirectional analysis. There's a possibility of a wildcard analysis, and doing match tolerance as well, so that we can make sure that if we want a super strong policy for some users who are dealing with sensitive information, we can have that. And if we want a policy for less sensitive users that makes their life a little easier, we can have that as well. But like I said, we don't want to just be police and tell people, no, 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 you're doing it wrong, without giving them some guidance. We want to be able to guide our users. So as I also mentioned before, we've heard that password meters are not a great way. And by password meter, I mean this red light, green light experience you're probably all used to. Like, oh, your password is not strong enough, add something else. Your password is not strong enough, add something else. You keep doing that until it turns green, and then you're good. We don't want to make it easy for people to choose easy or weak passwords. So we give a little bit more directed guidance, so that which is in line in the Windows change password module, that is easy, friendly, familiar for users, and gives them the rules of what their password should be like. It's fully configurable. You can change the text however you want, if you want to give it to different users. some different rules for different users. It can be dependent on the specific policy that's applied to that user as well. And you can give them the information that they need to choose a correct password. If they choose a bad password, it will tell them exactly where they've failed as well, so that they can go back and modify their password without just seeing it happening live. So they've got to make another attempt and maybe read the rules again. And it's not as easy as just the red light, green light meter, but that's an important part. The important part is the learning process, that the user has tried, missed a rule, and then they're gone back and made a better choice instead of just adding on exclamation marks at the end of the password to try to get around the check. And then one of the nicest thing about the Netwrix product as well is that it is well deployed. Thousands of companies are using it, including some of the largest. Our largest customer has 2.2 million users changing their passwords with this solution every day. And we're trusted by 4 of the top 5 retailers, lots of services companies. And I think the retailers are really poignant because these are users who are busy and not at their computers all day. They want to get their passwords changed and get their jobs done and move on. So we can't really expect them to be password experts. We want to give them a nice experience. So let me show you the password policy product. I have a server available here. I'll log into, maybe I can just, yeah, I'll just run if it's okay, I'll run the presentation on the back as a background. My apologies if it's a bit distracting. If I can get up the server, my fingers are fat. Let's see. Let's keep it like that because it's a little bit nicer view. So I'll log in. So it's super easy to install. It installs on your domain controllers, and it's a password filter. So the lightest implementation is just a single domain dynamic link library. You don't have to run any services on your domain controllers. We're not communicating with the internet every time someone changes the password, so we don't have any APIs that are necessary to run. We're doing everything internally on your domain controllers. And we provide a lot of different policies. So first of all, you want to have multiple policies. So we have a policy for everybody, which has some rules associated with. On the left, you see all of the different policies that I've got set up. So I have one for administrators, which is stronger. It's supposed to be stronger. I don't think it is in my demo, but one for everybody. So this is the basic one. Try to keep it simple. But I have one for finance as well, because they have to deal with PCI data. So I want to keep a separate one for them. I can create a new policy very easily. So if I want to create a policy for, say, human resources, make it my HR policy. And I can either copy it from another group or set that policy based on some standards. If I want to start with the NIST standard, so we'll be NIST compliant, I can choose that standard, and we'll get those base policies applied automatically. So now after I've done this and I know that the HR department is going to be compliant with the NIST standard, I can then assign it either to specific groups or our users to groups. If I want to find a group, I can go and search for the group. Or if they're just in an organizational unit, I can go and find that organizational unit and put it in there. I'll call it operations. Everybody in HR is an operation, so I'll put that there. So now I have a new policy for HR, and anybody in that group is now going to be defaulted to this policy first. So they'll have to meet this policy before they meet the other policies. If they're members of multiple policies, they'll have to meet them all, of course. So we'll probably have to have this as a stronger policy unless we want to exclude them from another policy. There are many different rules. I'll start with age. So you can go and set your age policy and decide how long people should have to have between they change their passwords. NIST compliance is recommending we remove this now. We don't require people to change their passwords, but we really want to make sure that they choose stronger passwords before we do that. So we after some things, like if you're going to just meet the basic requirements of the policies, then you have to change every 90 days. If you have a longer password, say it's more than 16 characters, maybe we'll let you change it less frequently. So it's kind of like a gift to our end users that every 2 years they can change their policy if they keep a long password as well. And it will also send you an email. You can set up what frequency that is of when your password is about to expire, so you can go in and change that password policy or that password on a regular basis and be warned of it, right? So it's not just a surprise your password has expired. You can also, of course, have minimum age and special characters. There's all of the basic complexity rules that are the same in Windows. I'll show you how to set that up in Windows just after this so that you know if you don't want to get into a product like this just yet, you can get a little bit of strength or at least check your strength. But you can add those complexity rules as well here. So yeah, adding alpha characters, upper, lowercase, special, all of this is included. And you can have one or more characters for these. There's also other things. I'll skip over these for a second, these 3 dictionaries, but of course you don't want to have people using the same password they did for the last few times. You can drop that to 8 or 9 if you want, or a password that was used in the last year. You can require length. Now I'm going to require or recommend at least 12 characters. If you have less than 12 now, you're really vulnerable. More than 12 should be good, but some companies are, the compliance framework still only requires 7 or 8 with complexity. So I'm saying, please at least do 12. That's going to keep you at least a modicum safer. And things like patterns, keyboard patterns, as we saw, one of the #1 types of password patterns to use, and that hackers have tables to use. So get those patterns removed as well. And also login name and disable and display name. You don't want users using their own name as well. There are some other things you can add, like unique characters and repeating characters as well. But that's kind of up to you. And the nice thing about having all sorts of different rules and the ability to adjust them yourself is you can add that extra layer of obfuscation by not only just having rules, but having unique rules for your organization. Now, let's jump quickly and look at some of the lists that users or hackers can get. So you probably know there are all sorts of tools and resources out there for hackers to get to hack your hashes and to spray your sites. We had a great webinar, as I mentioned, with Brian Johnson last week, where he actually walks through how to use these resources to go and do that. So, but I just wanted to show that this list available on GitHub for everybody just has lists and lists of the most common passwords. And if you want to look at one, you can say, okay, here are all the keyboard combinations. What the hackers are going to do is they're going to go and get these lists and then start spraying your site. Or they're going to get these lists and they're going to get some exfiltrated hashes from your organization and start using a tool like Hashcat or John the Ripper to just try those against all the hashes to see if they can catch them. One that I think is interesting is the months one, because this is really a top of mind for people, dates, months, seasons to use for passwords. And they'll do these things like common substitutions in order to get those passwords so they can remember them. We want to get this password here. But these patterns are weak, and these substitutions are weak. And we think that complexity enough is going to be good, but we can see from the lists that we have that complexity is inherent to them. These lists that they're spraying us are complex enough to meet the basic complexity requirements of Windows, so they're really not terribly useful. Insofar that if we do a test against our one of this rules, so I can do a test. Actually, I'll show you. I can do a test in the product. I can say test policies, and I can test individual passwords. So if I go back to my thing and I find a password here, I'm going to copy that one, go back to my server and put that in here. Password policy enforcer will reject that password because it's a dictionary match. But it doesn't reject it because it's not complex enough. And if we just have complexity rules in our out-of-the-box windows, we are not going to get that rejected. We can also use this test. So we go back and test again, and we can do a bulk test on all of the rules that we have. So I can actually go here and find download my months text file, which you can see is that text file which I got from the GitHub site. And I can actually test against my policies with that. So I can make sure that I won't run it because it takes a couple minutes to run, but it can go and test all of those passwords that I can get from those breach lists against my policies to see if they're a match. And I actually have a couple of results here from those. So this is the latest one. If you can see this thing, I've tested 11,000 passwords in that list, and I accepted none of those passwords because my policies were strong enough to reject them. But 0 of those passwords were rejected because they weren't complex enough. So that just goes to show us that the hackers know what the complexity should be. If we want to set, there are 2 ways to set. Let me jump to that just as an aside, and then I'll jump back to the policy enforcer. There's 2 ways to set the password policies in out-of-the-box windows. The first one, let me just bring this up, is in group policy. So this is the simplest one, probably the one that most people are using. If we go to group policy management, it's a little bit of a trick to navigate to it. It's nice, I've already got it up. We go to our domain, to group policy objects, to our default domain policy where this is going to be. We edit that. We go to the policies, Windows settings policies, our security settings, this is quite nested here. And under account policies, we're going to find our password policy. If we double click or we edit, open that, we can see what the policies are if we opened it. Right now I've got them all turned off because I'm using password policy enforcer, but this is the easiest way to enforce some history, age. You can do maximum and minimum. I don't know why minimum is important to them as opposed to other things, but you can also have length. So like I'm saying, put this at least 12 as a default. And then we have our complexity, but I don't really think complexity is doing so much. So just make sure you have length on for that. It's better to have much longer and less complexity, as we saw in the cartoon, than if you have short and complex. The other way to get some policies in this is with fine-grained policies. So this is for the whole domain. We can have this one policy, but Microsoft also offers fine-grained policies that we can have, like in Password Policy Enforcer, for different users. So to get that, we have to go to Active Directory Manage Administrative Center, and we go to the system. So if we're going to check a new one, if we want to add a new one, we have to go to System folder. And under there will be our password policy our password settings. I've already got it up here, so you can see the password policy that can be set by out-of-the-box windows here. So here you can decide whether you want to enforce minimum password length, and you can apply this to different groups in your domain. So you can of course set that and select users or groups in this setting, and then have different policies from them. It's just the same rules that you have, but that you can apply them to different groups. So there's lots of information about this. Also, we have a good blog post on our website that you can find about how to set these as well. So back to Password Policy Enforcer, and I wanted to save these for the last, is that in order for us to combat a lot of these common patterns, we have deployed a few things, and that is dictionary rules. So we give a dictionary with the product so that the most common passwords that we saw, like I talked about the common names and the words, those are rejected, and those are a partial match. So we're going to reject those, even if they're not a full match. So a very typical example is something like SolarWinds123. We know this is not a good password. It's been used a lot. We're going to reject that, of course. But we also will reject any combination. You can't just keep adding things. Can't add patterns. And as I said before, this is one of the most common things is that people just use those meters, excuse me, to add on some special characters at the end or in the beginning to get around those rules. And we can do that and still get it rejected. So we're blocking out those really common words. Same thing, maybe ARMA is going to be in there. I can't just keep adding junk on the end of ARMA to get it. Oh, maybe I can. To get a password, it's not in our list, but I could add it to our list. So we provide the out-of-the-box list. We also provide a secondary dictionary, and that's where the ARMA is going to go in, is that if we have a secondary dictionary, which we're going to call dictionary 2 in this point, then I can add my custom words to that. So if I go in here and I'll add ARMA as now a word that I want to block into the tool, and I go back to the tool and I test my policies now, any combination of ARMA, I hope this works, should be rejected. I can't just get around this by adding more terms. So this gives you another ability to kind of like customize that list so that our users are not using the terms. They're not just reliant on whatever the vendor is thinking. I can go in and put in my own words for this. So those are partial matches, and they're great tools to make sure that people are not using the kind of words that you're going to be vulnerable to. And the last one is complexity. Not complexity, sorry, compromise, the compromised list, which we check the Have I Been Pwned database, which is more than 1 billion compromised passwords. And it's an exact match. The reason why it's an exact match is, as I mentioned, there could be really good passwords that are out there, but they've been hacked and they've been exposed. So we want to make sure that there's no exact match for those. And that's why we have this automatic updater that can be scheduled every night to go out and get the latest list. And then we check against that compromised list for those things. So lots of great tools in here. It's really easy to set up. It's basically set and forget, and it's going to get you strong passwords. We also allow users to, or allow you to allow users to have exceptions if they choose long passwords. So I mentioned before, longer is stronger. We want to give that users a guidance to getting better passwords. So we allow for passphrases. And this means that if you have a password that is longer than a certain amount, so I would say 20 characters, if it's really long, we can forgive a lot of the other kinds of rules. We can forgive special characters. We can forgive these patterns. Maybe people can use them if they want, if it's really long. Maybe we'll forgive the base dictionary. We don't want to forgive our secondary dictionary, and probably not the compromised list, because as I said, there's lots of great passwords in the compromised list. So, but we'll let people use other words, and then they can use things like that horse battery staple example as a password and have, well, wouldn't want to use the exact one, but have a stronger password. And we can offer them guidance here. So you can see in mine, I'm saying, try a passphrase. Long password don't need complexity. So we're actually giving our users the ability to get stronger, longer passwords. Also, this guidance that we provide here will update on the fly so that users don't have to hit enter all the time. They can actually get whether or not the rules are being met as they type. So maybe I can give a quick example, Cloud Lab, and then I will try Donkey. No, that should be long enough. Donkey. Is it the same? So it does update so that the rules are shown. So that's useful too. And that part of it can be automatically deployed out to all your end users with GPO. So let's move on and talk a little bit about password management, because that's another suggestion from CISA that is a great way to improve your security posture is have strong passwords. Those are the two things really that they're telling us for password cyber security, or not cyber security awareness month, is password complexity, strong passwords really, and have a password manager. So why a password manager? Companies that have a password manager are, inversely to this, are 3 times less likely to be hacked than those ones that don't. So the reason for this is that users are sharing their passwords. They're writing them down. And maybe most critically, they're reusing their passwords. So I'm going to use it in Duolingo at the same password that I have in my corporate account. And I have some evidence of this as well. So every second employee uses the same passwords all over the place. I used to do this too. I had one password, I remembered it, used it everywhere. And that's what we want to get away with. That's the next step in our maturity, is to have not only have long, strong passwords, but have unique passwords across everything that we use, and be allowed to not even remember those passwords. That's the real luxury. That's the endpoint we're getting to, is the passwords are so long and strong and confusing that we don't even have to remember them. They're just stored somewhere. We can get access to that store, but we don't need to remember all that complexity. Why do they do this? Well, everyone has lots of passwords. Like I said, I have 333 passwords. That's a lot of things to remember. I could not possibly ever remember them all, but I can remember the login to my password manager. And having all of these unique passwords and with different rules associated with them, it's mind numbing for people. Even now with all the MFA and the challenge responses that I have to do and typing in numbers in my phone, I spend a ton of time every day dealing with credential verification, and we want to try to reduce that. As I mentioned, not only is this true, but last Thursday, I received this letter early in the morning in the mail that told me that 23andMe, because I did this genetic test a while back and I've had it for a couple of years, but they send me this mail telling me that they've been hacked. And actually, the hack is not so much that 23andMe were hacked, but that people used the same login credentials for other systems that were hacked or that had data leaks or data breaches. And they could use those credentials to come to 23andMe and log into people's accounts and steal their data. Not just one or two people, but at such a scale that they had to consider it a official data breach. And they got all sorts of data, and the hackers are selling this data on the dark web, and 23andMe found out about it and sent everyone a mail saying, "Oh, please, use unique credentials on our site," because people just use the same credentials for 23andMe, for Facebook, for Duolingo, for our corporate account. So how do we avoid this? Well, we want to use a password manager. There's hundreds out on the market. Netwrix provides one. It's very much a business solution. So it is, I'll just be aware of time because I want to leave 10 minutes for questions, but it is a business solution. It's self-hosted, means it's not SaaS. One of the reasons for that is I believe very strongly that those guys are too big of a target. We want to reduce our target, and bringing our password manager, at least getting control of our passwords and our secrets, is super important for most organizations. So I always ask my customers, who owns your secrets? Do you own your secrets? Well, the answer is usually my users own our secrets. The CEO, the people in accounting that have access to all our accounting systems, they are the ones who know the password in their head. They are the ones who write it down. They're the ones who send it to their Gmail or store it in their Dropbox. They own our secrets. You even get that next level, worse level, is that not only do they own the secrets, LastPass or some SaaS vendor owns your secrets. So we provide a product that is, we don't have any interaction to it. Netwrix doesn't, we sell you the software, it becomes yours. It is highly encrypted. We provide all of the encryption, like latest encryptions like ECC for data in motion, to keep that credentials, those secrets as safe as possible. It is fully configurable. So you can decide who you want to have access to it, who you don't want to have access to it, and log everything that happens to it. And of course, it's scalable. You could use it for 30 users or for 30,000 users. You get to decide how you want to expose it. So let me jump over to that and just give you a quick peek at that product and how it looks. So it looks like this. There's a Windows client. There's a browser interface. So you can see this is the browser piece. I'll show you. And there's a browser extension. You can also see I'm running Bitwarden, just as an example. But all of these work together and they work seamlessly. So you can log into just the browser extension if you want and get access. So if I go to LinkedIn and I go just have the browser extension going, I can go there. It will give me the options for what I have for LinkedIn to log in, or I can ask it to auto log in to LinkedIn. If I go to LinkedIn and type in, maybe if I go to another site and I auto log in, it will just try to log me in automatically. If I go to Bitwarden and I try to log in here, I can, first I've got to refresh my page. See, the password secure is trying to ask me if I want to auto log in with Bitwarden. I have to fill out the fields. And now my password is here in plain text. If I click show, you'll be able to see it. It's in the memory. With password secure, it's a simple tile-based UI, and we're going to pass the credentials. Not only going to pass the credentials, we're going to do it with one click. So you click the site, we open the site, it finds the fields that we need to pass, and it passes them. I can't click the I can't grab the password, I can't copy it to the clipboard. It's obfuscated in the memory. Once we passed it, it's immediately deleted. So now I'm in this site, whatever it is, and doing my job, and I haven't had to think about passwords. I hadn't had to copy them. I haven't had to move them. I didn't have to see it. I didn't have to, write it down. It just clicked and did my job. If I want to get that password, I can go and request it. It will decrypt it from the server, bring it over, but it hasn't put it into the clipboard yet. So it's still safe. And we try to do that to keep it as little as possible. You can also make it so that your end users don't even get to see that password. They try to copy it, they're not allowed. It's just passing that credential and letting them do that job. They could, of course, store their own passwords if you allow them to. So you can say, I would like to create a password for this website, and I'm going to generate a secure password. Don't see it by default, but I can generate a new password. Look at it if I want, super long, super complex. I can set those rules in the back for however I want it to be. I can connect it to applications. So it doesn't have to be a website. It could be a database or some application that I want to launch from this thing. And I can share it. I can share it with individual users if I want, or I can share it with groups. So let's say I want to give this credential to the entire help desk, or I want to give this credit card data to all of the people in finance, or that kind of thing. You can do that easily with this. But you can also restrict that access. So you could give access to users and not give them the ability to log in and see things. So super configurable, easy to use, supports, like I said, mobile devices, Windows client as well, and you can deploy it pretty much anywhere you want. If you want to put it on the internet for everyone to access, just for your organization, brand it with your branding, you can do that as well. Or if you want to keep it behind the firewall, you can do that too. You can see here, this user has no access to save passwords. He can only use the ones that he was given. There is also a more advanced experience for IT users and super admins or super users. It's not quite an admin experience, but they can go in and manage hundreds of passwords and share them out with users and things like that too. So super feature-rich product with lots of capabilities for a password manager. If you're worried about the cloud and those SaaS products, if you want to have complete control over your passwords and how users are using them, check it out. It's not hard to deploy. It just requires a little bit of hardware. And that doesn't have to be on-premises hardware. You can host it in the cloud if you want to, but it's basically under your control 100%. So I think I've run out of my time. I want to leave 10 minutes for some questions about either password policy enforcement or password management. So I'll shoot over to the question and answer section. Don't see any questions yet.
Yeah, perfect. Robert, that was a great presentation. We do have a couple questions for you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so to put you, to ask you some questions about the presentation, there's a lot of, you talked a lot about, the product is feature rich, password manager, how to prevent against hackers and things like that. Now there's a lot of articles out there about password expiration. What's your viewpoint on that? Because some companies, I think, force a password expiration, maybe 90 days, 120, 6 months, or what have you, maybe a few times a year. But then there's also other companies that don't even have an expiration date with passwords, password expiration. What's your thoughts on that?
So I have a bit of a controversial opinion on that, and it's somewhere in the middle of what our compliance frameworks are telling us. So most of the compliance frameworks like CIS and PCI are telling us 90 days. Get those passwords shifted. And that's real old school thinking. Let's change passwords all the time. We've got to keep them fresh. We want to keep those hackers guessing. The problem with that is that it generally encourages weak passwords. And we've done a lot of research, and there's a lot of research out there. Concordia University has some great research on this, that this kind of requirements are actually driving bad behavior. And we have to bring the human into the human experience into the element, right? Like you and me, and I do these things, adding numbers on the end, swapping out things, like super common pattern is I have a password, mine is, banana. But what I do every month is I just put on the month of the year that I'm supposed to change the password at the end of that. So it's September banana or banana September or something like that. Maybe do some complexity in there. And then I just keep doing that. And the problem is the hackers can get around this easily. So NIST came out and said, okay, we figured it out. We learned that this is bad. Don't require password changes. We recommend never. Just don't do it. It's kind of bad. That's a simplification of what they said. But the answer is that they say don't do it if you don't have to, because of that fact that it's driving people to change their passwords with easy ones and things they can remember. So I am in the middle. I'm like, I agree with that. Do not require people to change their password. It's always everything that we talk about nowadays. We want to have a very strong opinion, one very binary opinion of it, but things in our world are much more nuanced. And the nuance in this area is it's great to have a forever password, as long as we can encourage those users to have a strong forever password. And that, in my view, means a long password. As longer, the better. So if we can encourage passphrases like monkey, banana, jungle tree, or horse, battery, staple, or even a phrase that is familiar with your user, we can start to forgive that length. I would still put it to a year and a half, just because things happen, things change, and we want to make sure that there is some freshness. 90 days is definitely too short, because they're just annoying. You're poking users, right? You don't want them to have to do that. So my nuanced answer is yes, stop making them change their password so frequently, but make them use long passwords.
I think that's a fair point, because there's a lot of articles being written with the NIST information that came out, and there's still companies, requiring their clients and solution providers, professional services, to have a password expiration, and that is wise advice. Maybe not too short but not forever, maybe right in the middle.
Yeah.
To change some passwords, right? Of course, too, I think all of us forget our password, right? So at some point we can reset it and reset that password at some point for sure. So we have a few minutes. We have another question. I think, not to, I don't know if you can give us a case study example of a successful client that adopted a password manager. But I think there's a lot of conversation in the market about purchasing a password manager like LastPass. And how does your product differentiate between like a company like LastPass? I know you mentioned it a little bit during the presentation, but I think a lot of our members are wondering that.
It's a dizzying market. There are literally hundreds of different solutions for this, which in one way is fantastic because we're getting to the point where everyone has a password manager, and that's the maturity level we need to be. Not just businesses, but every individual needs to have a password manager. And even though LastPass is much maligned and they've been hacked a lot of times, and I wouldn't choose LastPass. I was a LastPass customer for many years. I wouldn't choose it now. It's still better than no password manager or managing your password in your browser, which is, there's a lot of shown things where that's, and they, the big companies keep releasing these browser-based managers, and there's just so many holes in them. So I would get some password managers, especially even for personal use. The big difference between what we do is it's a business solution. We don't sell to consumers, so you can't get Netwrix password secure for you and your family. I'm sorry to say, it was just too complex to set up. But what it's 100% built for is organizations to have a corporate password management strategy, so they can keep their corporate secrets in their corporate infrastructure, decide who gets what, build a process around password management instead of like relying, like many years ago, Netwrix did this. I hate to throw them under the bus for this, but they just gave everyone an account to LastPass, which I think came with our Log Me In subscription. And that was just a mess because people were just had a subscription. They stood it up and they're like, okay, is this for my personal stuff? Is this for my corporate stuff? And then most people just ended up not using it for anything because they couldn't figure out how it fit in their life. Whereas Password Secure is definitely fits in your work life. It doesn't fit in your personal life. You can allow users to put personal passwords in there if they want to, but as I wouldn't instruct my users to put their personal stuff in their corporate. We really want to have that work-life separation when it comes to things like secrets, and data. I don't put any personal stuff on my work laptop, and I don't put any work stuff on my personal computers. So I think the same thing with the password managers. We want to move towards a world where we have that segregation, and Password Secure is business focused, and it's something that your organization can build a password management strategy around as a business solution.
Yeah, I think that was excellent. I think every IT department would like to, quote you, because I think all IT departments are thinking the same thing. I think having freebie software out there and having organizations use freebie software, and you can create, unless you lock down the domain, you have a bunch of free accounts out there. So it's nice to have an option that is supportive of an organization structure rather than a free, personal.
Well, think about in the records context too, because I know we're records people here. Remember the days where everyone was storing all the corporate records on their personal Dropbox? And what kind of nightmare for records management that is? Like
that doesn't happen. What are you talking about?
That never happens. Not anymore. We're past that. I'm sure 100%. But that's the same kind of scenario, right? But with secrets as opposed to corporate records and sensitive data. So
yeah, for sure. So listen, we're out of time, but as we wrap up, we want to thank you for attending today's webinar. Again, thank you, Robert and Netwrix, for bringing this excellent session to our membership. We thoroughly appreciated it. We hope to see everyone at a future ARMA webinar in the future. As a quick reminder, access to the recording slides will be sent in a follow-up email from Zoom. IGP credits details will also be included in that email. I think there's actually 1 credit for security, 1 hour credit. So that's amazing. And if you have any additional questions, please email us at education@armainternational.org, and take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Jim. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.